The lobby of the Central Police Station was utterly silent. Every eye fixed on Officer Michael Harrison, who, in a blind fit of rage, stepped forward, spat in Carmen Valdez's face, and sealed his own fate. She didn't utter a word, simply wiped her face with dignity, her eyes locked on his, and whispered, "You've just made the biggest mistake of your life." What Harrison didn't know was that this woman, whom he treated as an intruder, held more power than anyone that could fathom. And in that moment, a game of power had begun. Now, you'll uncover who Carmen Valdez is and why underestimating her could destroy everything. But how did it all start? 3 weeks earlier, the hallways of San Antonio Central Precinct buzzed with rumors of changes in leadership. Michael Harrison, a 15-year veteran, caught every whisper with suspicion. "There's a shakeup coming in the chief's office," Johnson remarked, shuffling files. "Someone from outside," Martinez added, lowering his voice. "Someone with clout." Harrison snorted, adjusting his belt reflexively to him. Administrative changes were pure political theater. New faces promising reforms that never materialized. "Whoever is, they won't last 6 months," he muttered. "Those desk jockeys don't get how things work here." The following Tuesday, a scene in the parking lot caught his attention. An unfamiliar Latina woman was speaking quietly with Lieutenant Rodriguez and Captain Thompson. Something about her posture put Harrison on edge. It wasn't the deference of someone giving a statement or the nervousness of someone in trouble. It was absolute control. "Who's that?" Harrison whispered to Davis. "Showed up today. Rodriguez wouldn't say much, just that she's here on business." The woman wore a sharp, dark blazer, carried a leather folder, and spoke with natural authority. When she gestured, the senior officers leaned in, as if every word carried weight, probably from internal affairs. Harrison concluded, spitting on the ground, "Here to investigate someone." The thought made him uneasy. His service record wasn't spotless. A few archived complaints, poorly explained reports, nothing major, but enough to trouble a determined investigator. When the woman turned, Harrison noted her striking features, dark, intelligent eyes, a serene expression that contrasted with the officer's tension. For a moment, their gazes met. She didn't look away, studying him as if cataloging every detail before turning her attention to Rodriguez. "That one's trouble," he muttered to Davis. "I can feel it. Look at how she carries herself, like she owns the place. These types always come trying to prove something." As she walked toward the entrance, Harrison memorized every detail, her confident stride, the firm grip on her folder, the gaze that swept over everything as if committing it to memory. Carmen Valdez. He heard Rodriguez call her. The name lodged in his mind. That afternoon, he noticed Rodriguez and Thompson more tense, whispering. The secretary, Janet, was unusually quiet. "Something's up," he said to Johnson. "Something's always up. The question is if it'll affect us. That woman. You saw her, the Latina, pretty?" Harrison frowned. "It's not about that. It's what she was doing here. People like her don't show up by accident." "What kind of people?" "The kind who think they can change everything overnight, who don't get how things really work." Johnson eyed him before returning to his coffee. "You're paranoid, Harrison, but Harrison couldn't relax driving home." He tried to piece it together. 15 years in the force had taught him to trust his gut, and it screamed that Carmen Valdez was a threat. "Whoever you are," he murmured to the windshield, "you won't find it easy to mess with me." He didn't know that, at that moment, Carmen was in a downtown office, reviewing confidential precinct files, planning changes that would upend his life in ways he couldn't imagine. The mystery of Carmen Valdez was unfolding, and Harrison would learn that underestimating the wrong woman would cost him far more than pride. The next morning, Harrison arrived at the station determined to dig into Carmen Valdez, but she'd beaten him there. Passing the meeting room, he saw her seated with Rodriguez, analyzing procedure manuals, taking meticulous notes, orientation on protocols. Rodriguez explained when Harrison asked. "She's a temporary consultant, here to help with administrative improvements." "Temporary consultant," Harrison repeated with disdain. It was exactly what he'd suspected. Another outsider trying to teach them how to do the job they've been doing for years. Over the week, Carmen moved through the station with ease that deeply irritated Harrison. She knew every department, where files were kept, greeted staff by name as if she'd worked there for months. By Thursday, Harrison couldn't take it anymore. Spotting her alone in the main hallway, arranging papers in her folder. He decided it was time for a frank talk. "So, you're the famous consultant," he said, stopping in front of her, arms crossed. Carmen looked up calmly. "Can I help you? Officer Harrison, Michael Harrison. And yeah, you can help by dropping the act that you know how things work here." She closed her folder slowly, unhurried. Interesting perspective. "Look, I don't know where you're from, but this isn't the place for smug Latinas playing cop." The words carried more venom than he planned. This consultant story isn't fooling anyone. Carmen studied him for a long moment. No anger or fear in her eyes. Just a cold, calculated assessment that unnerved him. "Officer Harrison," she said at last, her voice low but clear. "Things are going to change soon, very soon. Is that a threat? An observation?" She adjusted the folder strap on her shoulder. "I suggest you reflect on your behavior, for your own sake." Harrison laughed scornfully. "My behavior? You should worry about yours. You know how many consultants like you I've seen pass through, all thinking they'd revolutionize something. And what happened? They learned theories, different from practice. That 15 years on the streets trumps any diploma on the wall." Carmen nodded slowly. 15 years. Time enough to develop many habits. Something in her tone made him falter. It wasn't submission or intimidation. It was almost pity. "Some habits are hard to break." She continued. "Others. Well, sometimes life breaks them for us. What's that supposed to mean? It means changes are coming, Officer Harrison. Big changes. And some of you are woefully unprepared." Rage surged in his chest. "Listen here, Mexican, American." She corrected coldly. "Born in Texas, but yes, of Latin descent. Go on. Doesn't matter where you're from. What matters is you don't know the station, these streets. You know nothing about real police work." Carmen smiled the first time. Not a friendly smile. "Officer Harrison, I know more about this station than you can imagine. Far more." The words hung heavy, her certainty unsettling. Harrison opened his mouth to retort, but she turned, walking away with that same controlled stride, leaving him fuming. Yet something in her voice, her unshakable confidence, gnawed at him. She wasn't bluffing, but he couldn't see the storm she was about to unleash. Days later, the precinct's atmosphere grew heavier. Whispers of Carmen's meetings with senior officers spread. Harrison's unease turned to paranoia. He started asking around, digging for anything on her, but found little. No one knew her background, only that she'd been brought in by higher-ups, possibly from the state level. Internal affairs, he told himself, or worse, some political appointee. Either way, he'd dealt with her type before, pushy outsiders who didn't last. But Carmen wasn't like the others. She didn't flaunt authority or demand respect. She simply commanded it. Her presence quiet but undeniable, like a current beneath still water. By the third week, Harrison's frustration boiling. He crossed paths with her again in the station's records room, where she was reviewing case files. He leaned in the doorway. "You're still here, huh? Didn't think you'd stick around this long." Carmen didn't look up. "I'm here as long as necessary, officer," he scoffed. "Necessary? You're stirring up trouble, asking questions, making people nervous. You think you're untouchable, don't you?" She set the file down, meeting his gaze. "No one's untouchable. Not me, not you. But I'm not the one making people nervous. Your actions do that well enough." His jaw tightened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I've read your file, Harrison. Every complaint, every shortcut, every incident you thought was buried. You've been careless, and carelessness catches up." His face reddened. "You don't scare me. Keep digging. You'll find nothing that sticks." Carmen's eyes narrowed slightly. "I already have what I need," she said, and walked past him, her shoulder brushing his. The encounter left him shaken. Her words too precise, too knowing. He stormed to the break room, venting to Martinez. "She's gunning for me. I know it." "Who?" "Valdez, the consultant. She's got some vendetta. Digging into my record." Martinez shrugged. "If she's IA, that's her job. Maybe lay low." Harrison slammed his fist on the table. "I'm not laying low. She want to fight. She'll get one." He didn't know how close he was to igniting the conflict that would unravel him. The day of the incident arrived. A chaotic morning at the station. A high-profile arrest had officers scrambling. Tempers flared. Harrison, already on edge, was processing paperwork when Carmen entered the lobby, her blazer crisp, folder in hand. She'd been meeting with the deputy chief. Her presence now a fixture, but to Harrison, it was a provocation. He overheard her speaking to Rodriguez about use of force reports. her tone calm but firm, suggesting changes of protocol. "That's it." He muttered, "She's trying to rewrite how we do our jobs." As she passed, he stepped into her path. "You're still here, telling us how to do our work." "Huh?" Carmen stopped, her expression unreadable. "I'm doing my job. Officer, I suggest you do yours." The lobby was crowded, officers and civilians watching. His voice rose. "Your job. Coming in here, acting like you run the place. You don't belong here." The venom in his tone drew gasps. Carmen's eyes locked on his. "Step aside, officer," she said evenly, but Harrison, fueled by weeks of resentment, snapped, "You don't tell me what to do." He spat in her face. The room froze. A civilian gasped. Officers exchanged stunned glances. Carmen didn't flinch. She wiped her face with a tissue from her folder, her movements deliberate, her gaze never leaving his. "You've just made the biggest mistake of your life," she said softly, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. Before Harrison could respond, the deputy chief's door opened. "Captain." Thompson stepped out. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded. Rodriguez, nearby, stepped forward. "Harrison just assaulted Ms. Valdez." Thompson's face darkened. "Valdez, as in?" He trailed off. Carmen turned to him. "Captain, I'll handle this. Please inform the chief I'll meet him shortly." Thompson nodded. Stunned Harrison, still defiant, scoffed. "Handle what? You're nobody here." Carmen's lips curved into a faint, chilling smile. "Nobody," she said. "You'll see." She walked to the chief's office, every eye following her. Harrison's bravado faltered, a sinking feeling creeping in. He didn't know who she was, but he just crossed a line he couldn't uncross. Inside the chief's office, Carmen sat across from Chief Daniel Rivera, a seasoned leader who'd been briefed on her arrival weeks earlier. "I didn't want it to come to this," she said, "but Harrison's actions today forced my hand." Rivera nodded. "I understand. When do you want to announce it?" "Now," she replied. "I reviewed the precinct operations, the personnel files, the incident reports. It's time." Rivera stood. "Then let's do this properly." An hour later, a mandatory briefing was called. Every officer packed into the main hall. Harrison stood near the back, arms crossed, uneasy but still defiant. Chief Rivera took the podium. "Today, I'm announcing a change in leadership, effective immediately. Our new chief of police will assume command. She's been with us these past weeks, observing, evaluating, and preparing. Her credentials are impeccable, her experience unmatched. Please welcome Chief Carmen Valdez." The room erupted in murmurs. Harrison's face drained of color. Carmen stepped forward, her blazer now adorned with the chief's insignia, her presence commanding. "Thank you, Chief Rivera," she began, her voice steady. "I came to San Antonio to serve, to strengthen this department, and to ensure accountability at every level." Her eyes swept the room, landing briefly on Harrison. "This precinct has potential, but also has flaws, resistance to change, unchecked behavior, and a culture that's tolerated misconduct for too long. That ends today. Officers shifted uncomfortably. Will implement new training, stricter oversight, and a zero-tolerance policy for disrespect or abuse to the community or within these walls." She paused. "As for Officer Harrison, his actions today, witnessed by many, are under investigation, effective immediately. He's suspended pending a full review." Harrison's jaw dropped, protests rising, but two internal affairs officers approached, escorting him out. The room was silent. Carmen continued, "I'm not here to tear this department down. I'm here to build it up. But make no mistake, I see everything and I will act." She stepped down, officers parting as she walked through, her authority undeniable. The precinct had a new leader, and Carmen Valdez was no consultant, no outsider. She was a reckoning Harrison had never seen coming. In the weeks that followed, Carmen's reforms took hold. Body cam compliance increased. Use of force incidents dropped and community outreach programs expanded. Harrison's investigation uncovered a pattern of misconduct, leading to his termination and pending charges for assault. The officers who'd enabled him faced discipline, and the precinct began to change, not without resistance. But Carmen's resolve was unshakable. Born in San Antonio to Mexican-American parents, she'd risen through the ranks in Dallas, earning a reputation for turning troubled departments around. Her time as a consultant had been a deliberate test, observing the precinct's culture, identify its weaknesses, and Harrison had played right into her hands. She'd known his type: brash, entitled, coasting on years of unchecked power. But she also knew the good officers, like Rodriguez and Thompson, who wanted change but lacked the authority. Now, they had a leader, and Carmen Valdez, once dismissed as an intruder, was rewriting the precinct's future. Her name no longer a question, but promise of justice, forged in silence, proven in action, unstoppable. How so? Let's say I had access to some interesting information. Archive reports, buried complaints, mishandled cases. Carmen paused significantly. Disciplinary records, Harrison's blood. You don't have the authority to dig into those files, don't I? Carmen tilted her head slightly. How interesting that you assume that. I know exactly who you are and where you stand here. Do you? Carmen's eyes glinted with something that might have been amusement. Officer Harrison, I assure you, you have no idea who I am. Then enlighten me. Soon, very soon, you'll know exactly who I am. And when that happened, she paused, locking eyes with him. I hope you remember this conversation. Harrison scrambled for a sharp retort, but Carmen was already walking away down the hall. He stood there, watching her move with that infuriating confidence, feeling as if he just lost an argument without grasping how. Temporary consultant, he muttered under his breath. We'll see how long you last, but for the rest of the day. Her words echoed in his mind. Things are going to change soon. It sounded like a threat, a warning, a promise. And Harrison didn't like any of those options that night. He called a few contacts, trying to dig up more on Carmen Valdez. But for some reason, no one knew anything. It was as if she'd appeared out of nowhere, carrying secrets that made even senior officers nervous. Whatever you're planning, he murmured, staring at the dark ceiling of his room. It won't work. He was wrong, profoundly wrong. The following week was a silent hell. Carmen arrived every day at 8 sharp, moved through departments with her notepad, observed procedures, and vanished at 5. On the dot. Like a ghost, no one understood, but everyone felt. Harrison decided it was time to escalate his pressure. Look who's here, he announced loudly as Carmen passed to the break room on Tuesday. Our favorite consultant. What's she teaching us today? How to make Mexican-style coffee. Other officers laughed nervously. Carmen didn't even glance his way. Hey, princess. He raised his voice. I'm talking to you. Carmen stopped, turning slowly. Can I help you? Officer Harrison. Sure you can. You can stop strutting around, scribbling notes like you own the place. I'm observing procedures. As requested, Harrison stepped closer, deliberately invading her space. Requested by who? Rodriguez, Thompson. They fall for your little act 2. What act would that be? The poor, oppressed Latina come to save us from our sins. Harrison made sure his voice carried, loud enough for half the lobby to hear. But that doesn't work here, sweetheart. Carmen made a note in her pad. Harrison saw red. What? Are you writing? Go to report me for harassment, for racism. He laughed harshly. Good luck proving anything. I'm just doing my job. Carmen replied calmly. Your job's a joke, consultant. He spat the word like venom. But you don't even know how to hold a gun right. Interesting observation. She said unfazed and walked away. In the days that followed, Harrison gave no quarter. Every time Carmen passed, he had a jab ready. Where's your little apron? Thought they'd put you in the kitchen. Hope. You drive better than the others. You're giving a class on cry when things get tough. Other officers began to notice. Johnson pulled Harrison aside on Thursday. Man, you're going too far. She doesn't even respond. That's exactly why I need to keep going, Harrison snapped. She's playing a victim, waiting for the right moment to strike. Strike at what? At all of us. These consultants always come with the same story. They're going to modernize, humanize, make everything more inclusive. Quoted, it's just an excuse to fire white guys. Davis shook his head. You're paranoid, Harrison. I'm being realistic, you'll see. On Friday, Harrison decided to test the limits as Carmen passed the reception desk. He shouted, Hey, Carmencita, forget to clean the bathrooms today, Janet. The secretary widened her eyes. Some officers stopped talking. Carmen kept walking, as if she hadn't heard. Deaf to? Harrison pressed. Or just playing deaf when it suits you. Carmen paused at the door without. Turning, Officer Harrison, now you've chosen to speak. I just want to make sure you're expressing yourself clearly, so there's no misunderstanding later. Misunderstanding about what? She turned at last, her expression perfectly serene, but her eyes held something icy. About who you really are, Harrison barked a laugh. I know exactly who I am. The question is, do you know who you are? I know precisely. A temporary consultant with no authority. If you say so, I do say so, and I also say you should stop scribbling down everything you see, because no one's going to take your little complaint seriously. Carmen closed her notepad slowly. Officer Harrison, your observations are being duly noted by who? Rodriguez Thompson. They know you're just an intruder, we'll see. No, we won't, because in a few weeks, you'll vanish like every other consultant who's passed through, and I'll still be a cop. Carmen nodded thoughtfully. An interesting prediction. Not a prediction. A certainty. Officer Harrison, she said, opening the door to leave. I suggest you make the most of these next few weeks. They might be your last here. Before he could respond, she was gone. He stood in the lobby, feeling every eye on him. What? Never seen someone put an intruder in her place, but no one answered. And for the first time in a week, Harrison felt a chill in his gut he couldn't explain. The following Monday, Sarah Mitchell entered the station with a folder full of documents and determination in her eyes. The civil rights lawyer was known citywide for never backing down from injustice, and today she had a specific mission. Harrison was at the reception desk, chatting with Janet, when he saw the blonde woman in the suit approach. Something about her purposeful stride put him on alert. Can I help you? Janet asked politely. I need to file a formal complaint against an officer of this precinct, Sarah said, placing the folder on the counter. Harrison's blood boiled, another feminist looking. To stir trouble. What kind of complaint? He interjected before Janet could respond. Sarah looked at him, surprised. Excuse me. I'm speaking to clerk. I'm an officer here. I can help. Harrison stepped closer, crowding her space. Who's the complaint about? I prefer to discuss this with your superior. I asked to. Harrison raised his voice, drawing the lobby's attention. Because if it's another one of these women sob stories, you're wasting your time. Sarah stepped back instinctively. What? Did you say? You lawyers love making up harassment and abuse stories for easy money. But that won't work here. Officer, I haven't even said what it's about. Don't need to. I know the script. How so? Let's say I had access to some interesting information. Archive reports, buried complaints, mishandled cases. Carmen paused significantly. Disciplinary records. Harrison's blood ran cold. You don't have the authority to dig into those files. Don't I? Carmen tilted her head slightly. How interesting. That you assume that I know exactly who you are and where you stand here. Carmen's eyes glinted with something that might have been amusement. Officer Harrison, I assure you, you have no idea who I am. Then enlighten me, soon, very soon. You'll know exactly who I am. And when that happens, she paused, locking eyes with him. I hope you remember this conversation. Harrison scrambled for a sharp retort, but Carmen was already walking away down the hall. He stood there, watching her move, with that infuriating confidence, feeling as if he'd just lost an argument without grasping how. Temporary consultant, he muttered under his breath, we'll see how long you last. But for the rest of the day, her words echoed in his mind. Things are going to change soon. It sounded like a threat, a warning, a promise. And Harrison didn't like any of those options. That night, he called a few contacts, trying to dig up more on Carmen Valdez. But for some reason, no one knew anything. It was as if she'd appeared out of nowhere, carrying secrets that made even senior officers nervous. Whatever you're planning, he murmured, staring at the dark ceiling of his room. It won't work. He was wrong, profoundly wrong. He was wrong, profoundly wrong. The following week was a silent hell. Carmen arrived every day at 8 in the morning sharp, moved through departments with her notepad, observed procedures, and vanished at 5 like a ghost no one understood, but everyone felt. Harrison decided it was time to escalate his pressure. Look who's here, he announced loudly as Carmen passed to the break room on Tuesday. Our favorite consultant. What's she teaching us today? How to make Mexican style. Coffee. Other officers laughed nervously. Carmen didn't even glance his way. Hey, princess. He raised his voice. I'm talking to you. Carmen stopped, turning slowly. Can I help you? Officer Harrison. Sure you can. You can stop strutting around, scribbling notes like you own the place. I'm observing procedures. As requested, Harrison stepped closer, deliberately invading her space. Requested by who? Rodriguez, Thompson. They fall for your little act too. What act would that be? The poor, oppressed Latina come to save us from our sins. Harrison made sure his voice carried, loud enough for half the lobby to hear. But that doesn't work here. Sweetheart. Carmen made a note in her pad. Harrison saw red. What are you writing? Going to report me for harassment, for racism. He laughed harshly. Good luck proving anything. I'm just doing my job. Carmen replied calmly. Your job's a joke, consultant. He spat the word like venom. But you don't even know how to hold a gun right. Interesting. Observation, she said unfazed, and walked away. In the days that followed, Harrison gave no quarter. Every time Carmen passed, he had a jab ready. Where's your little apron? Thought they'd put you in the kitchen. Hope you drive better than the others. You've given a class on crime when things get tough. Other officers began to notice. Johnson pulled Harrison aside on Thursday. Man, you're going too far. She doesn't even respond. That's exactly why I need to keep going. Harrison snapped. She's playing the victim, waiting for the right moment to strike. Strike at what? At all of us. These consultants always come with the same story. They're going to modernize, humanize, make everything more inclusive, he air quoted. It's just an excuse to fire white guys. Davis shook his head. You're paranoid, Harrison. I'm being realistic, you'll see. On Friday, Harrison decided to test the limits. As Carmen passed a reception desk, he shouted, Hey, Carmencita, forget to clean the bathrooms today. Janet, the secretary, widened her eyes. Some officers stopped talking. Carmen kept walking, as if she hadn't heard. Deaf too, Harrison pressed. We're just playing deaf when it suits you. Carmen paused at the door without turning. Officer Harrison, now you've chosen to speak. I just want to make sure you're expressing yourself clearly, so there's no misunderstanding later. Misunderstanding about what? She turned at last, her expression perfectly serene, but her eyes held something icy. About who? You really are? Harrison barked a laugh. I know exactly who I am. The question is, do you know who you are? I know precisely. A temporary consultant with no authority. If you say so, I do say so. And I also say you should stop scribbling down everything you see, because no one's going to take your little complaint seriously. Carmen closed her notepad slowly. Officer Harrison, your observations are being duly noted. By who? Rodriguez, Thompson. They know you're just an intruder. We'll see. No, we won't, because in a few weeks, you'll vanish like every other consultant who's passed through, and I'll still be a cop. Carmen nodded thoughtfully. An interesting prediction. Not a prediction, a certainty. Officer Harrison, she said, opening the door to leave. I suggest you make the most of these next few weeks. They might be your last here. Before he could respond, she was gone. He stood in the lobby, feeling every eye on him. What? Never seen someone put an intruder in her place. But no, one answered. And for the first time in a week, Harrison felt a chill in his gut he couldn't explain. The following Monday, Sarah Mitchell entered the station with a folder full of documents and determination in her eyes. The civil rights lawyer was known citywide for never backing down from injustice, and today she had a specific mission. Harrison was at the reception desk, chatting with Janet, when he saw the blonde woman in a suit approach. Something about her purposeful stride put him on. Alert! Can I help you? Janet asked politely. I need to file a formal complaint against an officer of this precinct, Sarah said, placing the folder on the counter. Harrison's blood boiled. Another feminist looking to stir trouble. What kind of complaint? He interjected before Janet could respond. Sarah looked at him, surprised. Excuse me. I'm speaking to clerk. I'm an officer here. I can help. Harrison stepped closer, crowding her space. Who's a complaint about? I prefer to discuss this with your superior. I asked who. Harrison raised his voice, drawing the lobby's attention. Because if it's another one of these women sob stories, you're wasting your time. Sarah stepped back instinctively. What did you say? You lawyers love making up harassment and abuse stories for easy money. But that won't work here. Officer, I haven't even said what it's about. Don't need to. I know the script. Harrison slammed his hand on the counter, making Sarah flinch. Fragile little woman comes here, whining that an officer was mean to her, felt intimidated, discriminated against. Across the lobby, Carmen watched silently, mentally noting every word, every aggressive gesture. Well, let me tell you, we're not swallowing that nonsense anymore. Harrison continued, pointing at Sarah. If an officer was tough on you, you probably deserved it. Officer Harrison, please. Janet tried to intervene. Shut up, Janet. Let me finish. Harrison turned back to Sarah. And before you think about suing anyone, remember we got lawyers too, and cameras, and witnesses. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to maintain her professional composure. Officer, I came here following legal procedures. Legal procedures, my ass. This is persecution. You feminists can't handle when a man does his job right. That's when Harrison noticed Carmen approaching quietly, still making her damn notes. And he spun toward Carmen, his fury reignited. Of course you'd be here. Spying. Officer Harrison, Carmen said, her voice controlled. Perhaps you should calm down. I'll calm down when you stop conspiring against me. Harrison was nearly hoarse from shouting. Enough of the act. Enough of the games. The lobby fell utterly silent. Officers froze in their tasks. Visitors stared open-mouthed. And Janet clutched the phone as if about to call someone. Carmen closed her notepad slowly. Officer Harrison, Ms. Mitchell has the legal right to file a complaint. Legal right. Nothing. This is political persecution. The breaking point came when Carmen stepped forward. Officer Harrison, stop immediately. She said, her voice firm. Ms. Mitchell has the right to file a complaint without intimidation. Harrison turned on her, eyes blazing with rage. What did you say? Stop threatening the lawyer. Now. The tension in the lobby was palpable, a powder keg ready to explode. Harrison's aggression had drawn every eye, and Carmen's calm, unyielding presence only fueled his rage. He took a step toward her, his voice a snarl. You don't get to tell me what to do. Consultant. You're nobody here. Carmen didn't flinch. Her gaze steady. I'm telling you to stand down, officer, before you make this worse for yourself. Worse for me. Harrison laughed, a bitter, mocking sound. You're the one who's done here. You and your little notepad. Thinking you didn't scare me, Sarah, still clutching her folder, spoke up. Officer, I'm here to address a serious issue, not to be bullied. Stay out of this. Harrison snapped, pointing at her. I'm handling this. No, you're not, Carmen interjected, her voice cutting through like a blade. You're escalating a situation that didn't need to escalate. Step back, now. Harrison's face reddened, his fist clenched. You think you can order me around? I've been a cop for 15 years. You're nothing but a glorified secretary. The lobby gasped. Janet's hand hovered over the phone, ready to dial. Carmen's expression remained serene, but her eyes were steel. Officer Harrison, you're making choices that will have consequences. I suggest you reconsider. Consequences, he spat, literally. His saliva hitting Carmen's face, the room froze. A civilian let out a shocked breath. Officers exchanged stunned glances. Carmen didn't move. She reached into her folder, pulled out a tissue, and wiped her face with deliberate calm, her eyes never leaving his. You just crossed a line you can't uncross, she said, her voice low but carrying an unmistakable weight. Harrison still ride his wave of defiance, sneered. What are you going to do? Write me up. Go ahead, see who cares. Before Carmen could respond, the door to the chief's office swung open. Chief Rivera stepped out, his face thunderous. What the hell is going on here? He demanded. Rodriguez, who'd been watching from the sidelines, stepped forward. Harrison just assaulted Ms. Valdez. Rivera's eyes narrowed. Assaulted Chief Valdez. Harrison's smirk vanished, his bravado crumbling. What? Carmen turned to Rivera. I'll handle this. Chief, please prepare the briefing room. We're making the announcement now. Rivera nodded, his expression grim. Harrison, you're confined to quarters, effective immediately. Report to my office after this. Harrison stammered. She's just a consultant. Rivera's glare silenced him. Move now. As Harrison was escorted out, the lobby erupted in whispers. Officers and civilians alike watched Carmen walk toward the briefing room, her posture unshaken, her folder still in hand. The question on everyone's mind. What announcement? Who was she an hour later? The precinct's main hall was packed. Every officer present. Harrison stood at the back, under guard, his confidence shattered. Chief Rivera took the podium. Effective immediately. I am stepping down as Chief of Police. My successor's been with us these past weeks, observing, preparing, and ready to lead. Her credentials are impeccable, her resolve unmatched. Please welcome your new Chief of Police, Carmen Valdez Ramirez. The room gasped, murmurs swept through. Harrison's knees buckled. Carmen stepped forward, her blazer now bearing the chief's insignia, her presence commanding. Thank you. Chief Rivera, she began, her voice steady, I came to San Antonio to serve, to restore trust, and to ensure this department upholds justice, both in our community and within these walls. Her gaze swept the crowd, lingering briefly on Harrison. We have work ahead. A culture of entitlement, unchecked misconduct, and resistance to accountability has been allowed to fester. That ends today. Officers shifted. Some nodded in quiet agreement. Others tensed. We'll implement mandatory training, stricter oversight, and a zero-tolerance policy for disrespect, abuse, or negligence. As for Officer Harrison, his actions today, witnessed by many, constitute assault and gross misconduct. He is suspended pending a full investigation, and I expect criminal charges to follow. Harrison's face drained of color, his protest stifled as internal affairs officers flanked him. Carmen continued, I'm not here to dismantle this department. I'm here to strengthen it. But make no mistake, I see everything, and I will act. She stepped down, officers parting as she passed. The precinct had a new leader, and Carmen Valdez Ramirez, once dismissed as a consultant, was now its unyielding force. Harrison's career was over, and the station would never be the same. In the weeks that followed, Carmen's reforms took hold. She introduced body cam audits, revised use of force policies, and launched community engagement initiatives. The investigation into Harrison uncovered a history of complaints, from excessive force to racial bias, leading to his termination and assault charges. Officers who'd enabled him faced suspensions, and the precinct's culture began to shift. Carmen, born in San Antonio to Mexican-American parents, had risen through the ranks in Houston, transforming troubled precincts with a blend of resolve and compassion. Her time as a consultant was a calculated move, sanctioned by the mayor to assess the station's weaknesses. She'd known Harrison's type, coasting on seniority, blind to change, but she also saw potential in officers like Rodriguez, who craved reform. Now, with Carmen leading, they had a chance. The files she reviewed, the complaints she'd unearthed, became the foundation for a new era, and Carmen Valdez Ramirez, once spat upon, stood as a chief who rewrote the rules, her name a symbol of justice, her resolve a beacon, her legacy just beginning. Who do you think you are, giving me orders? Harrison advanced toward Carmen, his face red with fury. Some Mexican nobody isn't going to boss me around. Officer Harrison, stand down, Carmen shouted, but his voice roared louder, echoing through the entire lobby. I'm sick of you. All movement in the precinct stopped. Officers froze on the stairs. Visitors turned, startled. Janet held the phone with trembling hands. You're a nobody, an intruder who came here to meddle where you're not wanted. Harrison spat the words with pure venom. You think you can waltz in with your little notes and change everything. Carmen stood motionless, but Harrison saw something shift in her eyes, an absolute, unyielding coldness. You're nothing. Do you hear me? Nothing, he raged, gesturing wildly. Just another smug consultant who won't last a week here. Officer Harrison, I suggest you calm down, Carmen said, her voice low but clear. I'll calm down when I feel like it. Harrison screamed, closing the distance until his face was inches from hers. And you're going to stop meddling in my life. That's when it happened. In a blind moment of rage, Harrison gathered saliva in his mouth and spat directly in Carmen's face. The silence that followed was deafening. Carmen didn't move for a few seconds. The spit dripped slowly down her face as she kept her gaze locked on Harrison. Then, with a dignity that mesmerized the entire lobby, she pulled a handkerchief from her bag and wiped her face slowly. You've just made the biggest mistake of your life, she said with a coldness that made Harrison step back instinctively. Janet, Carmen called, not breaking eye contact with Harrison. Did you record that? The secretary, still in shock, held her phone, camera aimed. Yes, I got all. Harrison looked around, finally realizing gravity of what he'd done. Every eye in the precinct was on him, a mix of horror and disbelief. I didn't. It was an accident, he stammered. An accident. Carmen folded the handkerchief carefully. Officer Harrison, you just physically assaulted someone in a police station in front of dozens of witnesses and cameras. Reality began to hit him. He glanced at Sarah Mitchell, pale with shock, at Janet, still holding the phone, at the officers on the stairs, staring in disbelief. Listen, Carmen. I got carried away, Ms. Valdez. She corrected coldly. Ms. Valdez, sorry, your apologies don't change what you did. Carmen closed her bag with precise movements. nor what you said, nor who you've shown yourself to be. Harrison tried to find words, anything to salvage the situation, but nothing came. Janet, Carmen continued, please preserve that recording. It will be critical in the coming days. Of course, ma'am. Carmen turned to Sarah Mitchell. Ms. Mitchell, I deeply regret what you witnessed here today. I assure you this will be addressed with the seriousness it deserves. Sarah nodded, still processing the scene. Then Carmen gave Harrison one final look. Officer Harrison, I suggest you make the most of your remaining time here, because it's running out. With that, she walked out of the precinct, leaving Harrison standing in the middle of the lobby, finally understanding he'd crossed a line from which there was no return. In the days following the incident, Carmen spent more time in the precinct's archives. Harrison saw her with stacks of folders, but his arrogance blinded him to the truth. At least they found her a useful job. He remarked to Johnson, organizing files. Johnson didn't respond, clearly uneasy after the scandal. What Harrison didn't know was that Carmen had full authorization to access all confidential precinct files, and what she was uncovering was devastating. A 2019 complaint, Officer Harrison used excessive force during a routine stop. The suspect was hospitalized with broken ribs. Status: archived for lack of evidence. A 2020 internal report. 3 witnesses reported racist language by Officer Harrison during a peaceful protest. Status: resolved with a verbal warning. A 2021 complaint. Officer Harrison intimidated a domestic violence victim, suggesting she deserved the abuse. Status: unproven. A 2022 complaint. Officer Harrison made inappropriate sexual comments to a female officer during patrol. Status: internal mediation. Each folder revealed a clear pattern of abuse of authority. Systematically cover up. Carmen photographed every document, cataloged every incident, building an irrefutable dossier. Our little archivist is working hard. Harrison commented on Friday, seeing Carmen with more files. Davis just shook his head. What? You've fallen for her sob story too, Harrison. Don't you think you've crossed enough lines? I put her in her place. What Harrison didn't see was that every remark only confirmed the profile Carmen was assembling. The following Monday, Carmen spent the entire day in the archives. Harrison saw her through the glass door, seated at a table with dozens of folders open, making meticulous notes, probably counting the staples in each file. He joked to Martinez. Women's work. Martinez didn't laugh. What's wrong with all of you? Getting soft after that little scene in the lobby. Harrison, you spat in her face. And what? She deserved it. What? Harrison didn't know was that Carmen had just found the most damning file of all, a 2018 complaint involving questionable use of lethal force, with witnesses who mysteriously recanted and evidence that vanished. At least she's quiet, Harrison muttered, watching Carmen organize documents with scientific precision. Better that way. Doing a useful little job instead of meddling where she doesn't belong. Carmen glanced up for a moment, catching his eye through the glass. Their gazes met briefly. She showed no emotion, simply returning to her files. Harrison saw it as her submission. Carmen saw it as confirmation she had enough material to destroy not only his career, but potentially send several people to jail. The silent investigation was nearly complete, and Harrison remained utterly oblivious to the hurricane about to devastate his life. During the week, something shifted in the precinct's dynamics. Female officers and minorities began approaching Carmen discreetly, whispered, conversations in hallways, quick meetings in the archive room, hushed phone calls. Officer Rodriguez pulled Carmen aside on Tuesday. I need to tell you about something that happened last year, she murmured, glancing nervously around. On Wednesday, Officer Martinez sought her out. Harrison called me a taco in front of everyone. I never reported it because I knew nothing would happen. On Thursday, Detective Thompson appeared, eyes red. He said women aren't cut out for interrogations, that I should use my charms to get confessions one by one. Stories that had never been officially reported reached Carmen. Harassment, discrimination, humiliations endured in silence for fear of retaliation. Harrison noticed a movement. Minorities always band together to complain. He remarked to Davis, watching Carmen speak quietly with Officer Sanchez, probably organizing a whining club. Davis didn't respond, but Harrison kept watching. Carmen seemed to be collecting more than just complaints. She was noting names, dates, specific details. On Friday, Carmen made a general announcement. There will be a special meeting on Monday at 8 in the morning. Attendance mandatory for all officers. The lobby fell silent. Special meetings were never good news. You would teach us how to make coffee. Harrison sneered, but the chill in his gut grew sharper. Carmen's calm, methodical presence was no longer just an annoyance. It was a threat. And the precinct was about to learn just how powerful she truly was. Going to teach us how to make coffee. Harrison asked sarcastically, eliciting nervous laughter from a few officers. Carmen looked at him directly. Officer Harrison, I assure you it will be a highly educational meeting for you. Something in her tone made Harrison's smirk fade. What's the meeting about? Johnson asked. Significant structural changes, Carmen replied. Very significant. Harrison tried to maintain his dismissive attitude, but something felt different in the air. The other officers seemed tense, as if they knew something he didn't. What kind of changes, he pressed. Carmen smiled for the first time in weeks. It was a friendly smile. You'll find out on Monday. Over the weekend, Harrison couldn't shake that smile from his mind. There was something final about it, as if Carmen knew exactly what she was doing, and she did. The preparations were complete. The dossier was ready. The witnesses were aligned. Monday would be the day Michael Harrison discovered exactly who Carmen Valdez was. Monday, 8 in the morning. The precinct auditorium was packed. Harrison walked in confidently, expecting another dull administrative meeting. Carmen stood on the stage, speaking with the mayor and other high-ranking officials. Good morning, everyone. The mayor said into the microphone, I'm here to officially introduce the new chief of police for San Antonio. Harrison frowned. New chief? No one had mentioned that. A professional with 20 years of experience in law enforcement. A specialist in police reform and anti-corruption. Harrison's blood began to run cold. It is with great pleasure that I introduce Chief Carmen Valdez. Harrison's world collapsed. Carmen stepped to the microphone amid polite applause. Harrison sat frozen in his chair, unable to process what he just heard. The temporary consultant, the nobody Mexican, the woman he'd spat in the face of. She was his boss, his ultimate superior, the one who held a career in her hands. Thank you, Carmen said, her voice resonating in the silent auditorium. Over the past few weeks, I've had the opportunity to closely observe the operations of this precinct. Harrison felt nauseous, and I've uncovered some interesting things. Each of Carmen's words hammered into his skull. Every insult he'd hurled at her, every racist joke, every sexist comment, the spit, all in front of his new chief. Some changes will be implemented immediately, she continued, looking directly at Harrison, starting with pending disciplinary matters. Harrison tried to sink into his chair. Around him, other officers glanced at him with a mix of pity and surprise. They were finally understanding why Carmen had remained so calm through his humiliations. She knew exactly who she was. Officer Harrison. Carmen called for the microphone. The name echoed to the auditorium like a death sentence. Harrison couldn't stand. Officer Harrison, please see me after the meeting. He nodded mechanically, feeling 100 pairs of eyes on him. The meeting continued, but Harrison heard nothing else. His mind was caught in an endless loop. The new chief of police was a woman he called a nobody, an intruder, a Mexican nobody, the woman he'd spat in the face of. When the meeting ended, Harrison remained glued to his chair. As others filed out, Carmen stepped down from the stage and walked toward him. Surprised, Officer Harrison. Harrison opened his mouth, but no sound came. 3 weeks watching you. 3 weeks listening to every word. Seeing exactly who you are. Harrison finally managed to speak. I didn't know. Didn't know what? That you should treat people with basic respect. That you shouldn't spit in anyone's face. Harrison lowered his head, finally grasping the magnitude of what he'd done. You're finished, Harrison. Completely finished, Carmen said, already walking away, leaving him no time to process what had just happened. The next day, Carmen summoned Harrison to her new office, the same office that once belonged to former Chief Davis. Officer Harrison, you are suspended effective, immediately without pay, pending a disciplinary investigation. Harrison tried to protest, but Carmen raised a hand. I'm also announcing a full investigation into institutional corruption in this precinct. Your conduct will be just one part of it. Carmen, Chief, for the past 3 months, I wasn't here just as a consultant. Carmen opened a thick folder. I was conducting a federal investigation into a corruption scheme involving this precinct. Harrison felt the floor vanish beneath him. Former Chief Davis was taking bribes to bury cases. Councilman Bradley was facilitating fraudulent contracts. And several officers were part of the scheme. At that moment, a knock came at the door. 2 federal agents entered, agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Carmen announced, "They're here to execute arrest warrants." Harrison watched in shock as the agents left to arrest Davis and Bradley. The operation Carmen had been quietly planning was unfolding. Your consultancy was a lie. It was my official role. Special investigator appointed by the Department of Justice. Carmen closed the folder. 3 months undercover, gathering evidence, documenting abuse interaction patterns, ensuring airtight arrests. And me, you were an unexpected bonus. Every insult, every attack, every racist and misogynistic outburst was documented, along with your past disciplinary violations. Harrison realized he'd been watched, cataloged, studied like a specimen for weeks. The spitting incident was the decisive moment. Carmen continued. Physical assault on a federal superior, a federal crime. I didn't know you were. It doesn't matter who I was. It matters who you are. Just then, word came that Davis and Bradley had been arrested. The operation was complete. Your disciplinary hearing is next week. Carmen said, "I suggest you find a good lawyer." Harrison left the office, knowing his career was over, not just because of his recent actions, but because Carmen had months of evidence against. The entire corrupt system he was part of, the temporary consultant, had brought down a network of corruption, and he'd made it all easier with his own arrogance. 3 months later, Michael Harrison was unemployed, facing criminal charges, and utterly ruined. The disciplinary hearing was a formality. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Terminated for cause, charged federally for assault, with criminal record barring him from ever working in public safety again. Sitting on his couch in court, Harrison watched the news when a report caught his attention. San Antonio Police Chief Carmen Valdez receives the National Award for Excellence in Policing Today, he said, disbelief mounting. Her revolutionary policing reforms have cut crime rates by 60% and boosted community trust at historic levels. The reporter said, Valdez is regarded as one of the most respected police leaders in the nation. The screen showed Carmen on a stage in Washington, accepting the award from the Attorney General. Her innovative undercover investigation tactics led to the dismantling of one of Texas's largest corrupt police networks. The report continued. Harrison turned off the TV. Finally grasping the scale of who he'd crossed, Carmen Valdez wasn't just a temporary consultant. She was an elite federal investigator, a specialist in anti-corruption with 20 years of experience dismantling corrupt systems like his, and he'd spat in her face. The Mexican nobody he despised was now nationally recognized as one of America's greatest police reformers. The intruder he'd tried to humiliate had saved San Antonio's reputation and jailed criminals whose existence he hadn't even suspected. Harrison realized he hadn't just underestimated a woman. He'd underestimated a force of nature, someone who'd watched silently for months, gathering evidence, waiting for the perfect moment to unleash her devastating power. His arrogance had blinded him completely. The woman he'd tried to destroy was rising to the top of the world, and he was at the bottom of the pit, where he'd always belonged.